The quiet hum of the engine was the only sound on the bridge of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon. Captain John Mitchell sat in his command chair, his eyes fixed on the vast emptiness of space through the main view screen. They were at the edge of explored space, farther than any human ship had ventured before. "Captain, I'm picking up strange energy readings from Sector 7, said Susan Hayes, the chief science officer. Her fingers moved quickly across her console as she analyzed the data. "I've never seen anything like this before." Mitchell stood up and walked to her station. "What kind of energy, Susan?" "Unknown, sir, but it's massive and it's moving." She looked up at him, her eyes wide with excitement and a hint of worry. "Whatever it is, it's not natural." Alan Brooks, the military liaison assigned to the Horizon, joined them at the science station. His face was serious as always. "Could be a trap. We should report back to Earth Command before investigating." Mitchell considered Brooks's advice. The man was careful and by the book, qualities that had kept them alive on more than one occasion. But Mitchell hadn't become a captain by always following the rules. "Send a message to Earth Command about our findings. But we're going to take a closer look," Mitchell decided. "Plot a course, Lieutenant Garcia." "Course plotted, sir," the young navigator replied. "ETA 20 minutes at standard speed." As they approached the source of the energy readings, the crew grew quieter. Something about the emptiness ahead didn't feel right. Hayes continued to monitor her instruments, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Captain, I'm detecting spatial distortions. These readings suggest technology far beyond our own," she reported. "Slow to half speed," Mitchell ordered, "and activate the stealth systems." The Horizon's revolutionary stealth technology was Earth's best-kept secret. It couldn't make them invisible, but it reduced their energy signature enough to avoid detection at a distance. The ship slowed as it approached a small, rocky planet orbiting a dim star. According to their database, this planet was home to a peaceful colony of Ardarians, a species known for their advanced art and philosophy rather than military might. "My God," whispered Hayes. The view screen showed destruction unlike anything they had seen before. The Ardarian colony was being systematically destroyed by strange ships that looked like a cross between insects and machines. They moved with unnatural coordination, as if controlled by a single mind. "Get me a closer view of those ships," Mitchell ordered, his voice tight. The screen zoomed in on one of the attacking vessels. It was black with blue glowing lines along its hull. It moved with incredible speed and precision. "They're harvesting the planet," Hayes said in horror as she analyzed the data. "They're breaking down everything, buildings, plants, even the Ardarians themselves, into base components." Brooks's hand moved to the weapon controls. "Sir, should we help? The Ardarians are peaceful. They can't defend themselves." Mitchell wanted to help. Every part of him screamed to intervene, but he knew his small exploration vessel was no match for the fleet before them. "No. We'd be destroyed before we could make a difference. Our duty now is to gather intelligence and warn Earth." The bridge crew watched in silent horror as the colony was consumed. The attacking ships moved with frightening efficiency, like a swarm of locusts devouring a field. "Captain," the communications officer spoke up, his voice shaking slightly. "I'm picking up a distress signal. It's weak, but—" "Put it through," Mitchell ordered. A voice filled with static and fear filled the bridge. "This is Elder Vox of New Ardaria. If anyone receives this, they call themselves the Void Swarm. They cannot be reasoned with. They consume everything. We are not the first. We will not be the—" The message cut off abruptly. "Sir," the sensor operator called out urgently. "Several of the hostile ships have broken off from the main group. They're heading our way." Mitchell's mind raced. They had been detected despite their stealth technology. "Full reverse, prepare for emergency warp jump." "Sir, we need at least 2 minutes to charge the warp drive," the engineer reported. Mitchell knew they didn't have 2 minutes. "Evasive maneuvers. Brooks, ready all weapons, but hold fire unless I give the order." The Horizon turned sharply, accelerating away from the approaching enemy ships. But the Void Swarm vessels were faster, closing the distance rapidly. "They're scanning us," Hayes reported. "The intensity, it's like they're trying to take us apart, with just their sensors." Mitchell made a split-second decision. Release probe 7 with a full energy signature. Make it look like we're ejecting our core. The crew looked at him in surprise but followed orders. The small probe shot out from the horizon, its energy signature modified to mimic a ship in distress. Now cut all non-essential systems. Minimal life support, minimal thrusters. Make us look dead in the water, Mitchell ordered. The lights on. The bridge dimmed as the ship powered down. They watched breathlessly as the pursuing Voidswarm ship suddenly changed course, heading for the probe. They took the bait? Brooks said with surprise. Not for long, Mitchell replied. How long until warp? 90 seconds, sir. The enemy ship surrounded the probe, scanning it intensely. When they realized the deception, they turned back toward the horizon with what seemed like anger. They're coming back and they look mad, Brooks announced. 50 seconds to warp, the engineer called out. The Voidswarm ships approached rapidly, weapons charging. They're locking weapons, the tactical officer warned. Mitchell hit the comm button. All hands, brace for impact. The first blast hit the horizon's shields, causing the entire ship to shake violently. Warning lights flashed across the bridge. Shields at 60%, Brooks reported. Another hit rocked the ship. 30 seconds to warp. Mitchell turned to Hayes. Are you recording all of this? She nodded, her fingers flying across her console. Every bit of data we can gather. Fire countermeasures, Mitchell ordered. Spread pattern alpha. Small decoy devices shot out from the horizon in all directions, each emitting different energy signatures designed to confuse enemy targeting systems. The tactic worked partially. The next volley from the Voidswarm was less accurate, with only one shot grazing the ship's hull. 15 seconds. On the view screen, more Voidswarm ships were breaking away from the planet, heading toward them. If they didn't get away now, they never would. 10 seconds. The lead enemy ship fired again, this time hitting the horizon squarely. On its port side, shields critical. Hull breach on deck 3. Emergency bulkheads engaged, Brooks shouted over the noise of alarms. 5, 4, 3. The engineer counted down. The Voidswarm ship surrounded them, weapons ready for the killing blow. 2, 1. Warp drive engaged. The stars on the view screen stretched into lines as the horizon jumped to warp speed, leaving the Voidswarm behind. The bridge crew let out a collective sigh of relief. Damage report, Mitchell ordered once they were safely away. Hull breach contained. 3 crew members injured, none critical. Warp drive functioning at 89% capacity. We can make it. Home, Brooks reported. Mitchell turned to Hayes. What did we just witness? She looked up from her console, her face pale. Based on the data and that distress call, I believe we just encountered a species that has conquered numerous worlds. Their level of coordination suggests a hive mind. They're unlike anything we've encountered before. And now they've seen us, Mitchell said grimly. They know humans exist. Sir, Hayes added, there's something else. When we used that trick with the probe, it confused them. They didn't adapt immediately like you'd expect from an advanced species. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. Meaning? Meaning they may not understand deception or creativity. They're coordinated and powerful, but perhaps predictable. Brooks nodded, slowly. If that's true, it could be an advantage. A small one, but still. Set course for Earth, Mitchell ordered. Maximum safe speed. We need to warn everyone about what's coming. As the horizon sped toward home, none of the crew knew that. Aboard the lead Voidswarm ship, a commander named Zekthar was experiencing something new. Frustration. In thousands of standard cycles, no prey had ever escaped the Voidswarm. Until now, these humans would need to be studied. And then, like all others, they would be consumed. But as Zekthar processed the encounter, deep within its collective consciousness, there was the faintest trace of something the Voidswarm had never known before. Doubt. 3 weeks after their narrow escape, the horizon limped into Earth's orbit. The ship still bore the scars of its encounter with the Voidswarm. Captain John Mitchell stood at the viewport in his quarters, looking down at the blue planet below. He had never been so happy to see home. His door chimed. "Enter," he called out. Susan Hayes walked in carrying a data tablet. Her usual neat appearance was gone, replaced by dark circles under her eyes and wrinkled clothes. She had barely slept since their encounter, analyzing every piece of data they had collected. "I finished the report," she said, placing the tablet on his desk. "It's worse than we thought," Mitchell sighed. "How much worse?" "Based on the data and the distress message, the Void Swarm has already destroyed at least 7 known civilizations, and those are just the ones we know about." Mitchell picked up the tablet and scanned through the report. "Have you shown this to Brooks?" "Yes. He's already working on defensive strategies, but—" She hesitated. "But what?" "He doesn't think Earth stands a chance alone." Within hours of their arrival, Mitchell and his senior crew were summoned to Earth Command headquarters. The room was filled with high-ranking military officers and government officials. Admiral Patricia Daniels, the commander of Earth Fleet, stood at the head of the table. "Captain Mitchell," she said, her voice firm, but her eyes revealing concern. "We've reviewed your report. If what you witnessed is accurate, we're facing an unprecedented threat." "Every word is true, Admiral," Mitchell replied. "And the recordings don't capture how perfectly coordinated they were, like they shared one mind." "A hive mind," Hayes added, "acting with perfect unity, but possibly lacking in creative thinking." Admiral Daniels nodded. "We've already started preparing defenses, but I'm afraid Earth alone may not have the resources or technology to withstand this void swarm." "Ma'am," Brooks spoke up, "if I may suggest, we should reach out to other species. Form a coalition, the Mo." Door to the conference room opened and a junior officer rushed in. "Admiral, sorry to interrupt, but we've got ships approaching. 7 vessels of different designs. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." Everyone tensed, thinking the Void Swarm had found Earth faster than expected. "They're saying they come in peace," the officer continued. They're refugees, seeking our help." The meeting was quickly moved to the larger diplomatic chamber. On the view screens, the captains of 7 different alien vessels addressed the Earth representatives. Each told the same story. Their worlds had been attacked and consumed by the Void Swarm. They had fled carrying survivors and whatever technology they could save. "We have heard stories," said a tall, blue-skinned being named Vorlath. "Stories of a species that escaped the Void Swarm. We did not believe it possible until we detected your vessel returning to this system." "How did you find us?" Admiral Daniels asked. "We have been watching the edges of Void Swarm territory," answered another alien, a reptilian called Sestke. "When we detected your ship escape, we followed at a distance. Many others have tried to flee. None succeeded until you." Mitchell stepped forward. "You mentioned others. How many worlds has the Void Swarm taken?" The aliens looked at each other, their expressions grim even across species boundaries. "By our count," Vorlath said slowly, "they have consumed over 40% of known civilizations in this quadrant of the galaxy." A stunned silence fell over the Earth representatives. "How did you survive individually?" Hayes asked. "All our data suggests the Void Swarm operates as a unified force." The aliens seemed confused by the question. "We did not survive as individuals," Sisistic explained. "Our species survived because some ships escaped before our planets fell." "No, I mean," Hayes tried again. "How did you maintain your individual thoughts? Why weren't you absorbed into their hive mind?" Now the aliens looked truly confused. You operate as individuals?" asked a floating, jellyfish-like being named Quor. "Your species does not share a central consciousness?" Brooks looked at Hayes, then at Mitchell. "Are they saying all advanced species develop a hive mind?" "Not exactly," Vorlath clarified. "But most develop some form of shared consciousness, especially in crisis. It is more efficient." "But you still have individual thoughts?" Hayes pressed. "Yes, but diminished in times of danger. It is how we survive, by becoming more like one mind." Mitchell suddenly understood. "That's why the Void Swarm is so effective against your people. You think too similarly in crisis." "And why your deception worked," Quor added, tendrils waving excitedly. Your minds remain chaotic, unpredictable. The Void Swarm cannot anticipate individual thinking. Admiral Daniels took control of the conversation. Then we need to use this advantage. Captain Mitchell, I'm promoting you to command our first defense fleet. These refugee ships will join with ours to form a new alliance. We'll need more than ships, Mitchell said. We need new weapons, new tactics. Already working on it, came a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see a rumpled-looking man with wild gray hair and a stained lab coat. He carried what looked like engine parts in his arms. Kevin Russell, Admiral Daniels introduced him with a slight eye roll. Our most brilliant and most eccentric weapons engineer. Russell dumped the parts on a table. Those aliens are right. The hive mind thing is their weakness. They don't get individuals, and they sure as hell don't get human creativity. He grabbed a marker and began drawing on a clear board. I've been working on weapons most alien species consider too dangerous to develop. Weapons that require independent operators making split-second decisions. Like what? Brooks asked. Like this. Russell's drawing showed what looked like a small ship with unusual attachments. I call it a disruption pod. It generates electromagnetic pulses that might interrupt their hive communication. Might? Mitchell questioned. Won't know until we try. Russell grinned. That's the beauty of science, trial and error. Admiral Daniels stepped in. We're establishing a new command center on Europa. We're calling it Alpha Base. It will be the headquarters for our new coalition, the Galactic Defense Initiative. As the meeting continued, a young woman with dark hair quietly entered and stood at the back of the room. Admiral Daniels noticed her and waved her forward. This is Laura Winters, our top diplomat and xenolinguist. She's been working with a captured Void Swarm drone. All eyes turned to Winters, who looked uncomfortable with the attention. I've made contact, she said simply. The drone is part of the collective but damaged, cut off from the main hive. It's afraid. Afraid of what? Mitchell asked. Of you. Of humans. Winters looked at each of them. It called humans the unabsorbable ones. The drone says the Void Swarm can consume any species, incorporate their knowledge and abilities. But they tried with humans they encountered at border worlds and failed. Failed how? Hayes asked, leaning forward. Our brains are too individual, too chaotic. They can't sync with our neural patterns. Winters took a deep breath. And that terrifies them. We're the only species they cannot predict or control. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the building. An officer rushed in. Admiral, we're detecting warp signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts approaching Neptune's research outposts. Admiral Daniels's face hardened. They found us faster than we expected. Captain Mitchell, your first mission begins now. Take whatever ships are ready and intercept them at Neptune. Mitchell nodded grimly and turned to Brooks and Hayes. Looks like the horizon gets no rest. Prepare for immediate departure. As they rushed to leave, Vorlath stopped Mitchell. Captain, there is something you should know. The Void Swarm never attacks this quickly after discovering a new species. They study first, then attack. What does that mean? Mitchell asked. It means you've done something no one has done before, the alien replied. You've made the Void Swarm afraid. As Mitchell headed to his ship, he thought about those words. The galaxy's worst nightmare was afraid of humans. Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to save them all. Fire at will, Captain John Mitchell shouted as his ship, now renamed the Defiance, dove straight toward the Void Swarm vessels attacking Neptune's research stations. 3 weeks had passed since the first Void Swarm ships entered the Sol system. What started as a small probe had grown into a full-scale invasion. Earth forces joined by the refugee aliens fought bravely, but were losing ground. Mitchell's tactical screen showed the battle unfolding around Neptune. 5 Void Swarm ships moved in perfect formation, their blue energy weapons cutting through the human defense line. Captain Ghostwalker's team is in position, reported the communications officer. Mitchell nodded. Tell Major Cooper he's cleared to engage. Far from the main battle, a small stealth ship approached the largest Void Swarm vessel from behind. Inside, Major Ryan Cooper and his team of special forces prepared for a dangerous mission. Remember, Cooper told his team as they checked their gear, these things think as one. They expect armies, not small teams. Use that against them. The 6 soldiers nodded. They wore experimental suits designed by Kevin Russell, with technology that disrupted the Void Swarm's sensors. 30 seconds to contact, the pilot announced. Cooper looked at his team one last time. Let's show these bugs why humans are the scariest species in the galaxy. Their ship attached to the hull of the massive Void Swarm vessel. Using cutting tools, they burned through the outer shell and entered the enemy ship. Inside, it was like being in a giant insect nest. Blue light pulsed through organic-looking corridors. Strange sounds echoed all around them. Planting charges. As we go, whispered one of Cooper's team, attaching small explosives to what looked like important parts of the ship. They moved deeper, avoiding drone workers that scurried about. Unlike the coordinated attacks inside the ship, the Void Swarm seemed unprepared for intruders. They never expected anyone to get this close, Cooper realized. They don't have internal defenses. Meanwhile, back on the Defiance, Susan Hayes monitored the Ghostwalker's progress. Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from the Void Swarm flagship, she reported. The pattern suggests they're communicating more intensely. They've detected Cooper's team, Mitchell guessed. No, that's just it. They haven't, Hayes said, excitement in her voice. The energy pattern shows confusion. They sense something's wrong but can't pinpoint it. It's like they have a blind spot for small independent threats. Mitchell understood immediately. They've evolved to fight armies and fleets, not guerrilla tactics. He opened a channel to all Earth ships. All vessels break into smaller attack groups, 3 ships maximum per group. Operate independently. Don't follow predictable patterns. The Earth fleet, which had been fighting in traditional formation, suddenly broke apart into smaller units. Each began attacking from different angles using different tactics. On his command screen, Mitchell watched as the perfectly coordinated Void Swarm ships began to show signs of confusion. Their movements became less fluid, their responses slower. Inside the lead Void Swarm ship, Cooper's team reached what appeared to be a central chamber. Strange, pulsing organic material filled the room, connected to technology unlike anything they had seen. This must be their command center, Cooper said. He set the largest charge in the middle of the room. Set timer for 5 minutes. That should give us time to get back to the ship. As they turned to leave, alarm sounds began to echo through the vessel. Drone workers rushed in their direction. They've spotted us, one of Cooper's team called out. So much for the stealth suits. Change of plans, Cooper decided quickly. Split up. Jones and Rivera head back to the ship and prepare for immediate departure. The rest of us will create distractions. The team separated. Cooper led his group in the opposite direction, firing at drone workers and planting remaining charges as they went. Back on the Defiance, Hayes suddenly sat up straight at her console. Captain, I'm picking up something new. The Void Swarm ships are starting to adapt to our tactics. Mitchell watched as the enemy vessels began to counter the smaller attack groups more effectively. They're learning, fast. Sir, the communications officer called. Incoming transmission from Europa base. Lisa Chen wants to speak with you. Mitchell nodded, and the tactical expert's face appeared on his screen. Chen had been analyzing battle data from every engagement with the Void Swarm. Captain, I've noticed a pattern, Chen said without greeting. The Void Swarm adapts faster when their ships are close together. They share information physically, not just through communication. So we need to keep them separated, Mitchell concluded. Exactly. And there's something else. They always protect their largest ship. I think that's where their local commander is. Mitchell looked at the tactical display. The largest Void Swarm ship, the one Cooper's team had infiltrated, was indeed surrounded by smaller vessels. Cooper needs to hurry, Mitchell muttered. Inside the Void Swarm ship, Cooper and his remaining team members ran through corridors, pursued by increasing numbers of drones. They had planted all their charges and were now heading back to their extraction point. Jones, status report, Cooper called into his comm. "Ship is ready, sir," came the reply. "But we've got company outside. Drones are swarming the hull." Cooper thought quickly. New plan. "Jones, detach and move to backup extraction point Delta. We'll meet you there." Cooper led his team down a different corridor, one that would take them to an outer section of the hull. As they ran, the first explosives they had planted began to detonate. The ship shuddered around them. Back on the Defiance, Mitchell watched as explosions began to ripple across the surface of the lead Void Swarm vessel. "Cooper's charges are working," Brooks reported. "The enemy ship is losing power." "And look at the others," Hayes pointed out. The other Void Swarm ships had suddenly become less coordinated, their movements almost sluggish. "They're connected to their leader," Mitchell realized. "When one suffers, they all feel it." He opened a channel to all ships. "All units, focus fire. On damaged enemy vessels. Don't give them time to recover." The Earth fleet and their alien allies concentrated their attacks on the weakened Void Swarm ships. For the first time since the battle began, they had the upper hand. On the main Void Swarm vessel, Cooper's team reached an outer section. The ship was breaking apart around them. "We need to make our own exit," Cooper told his team. He pointed to what looked like a thinner section of the hull. "Plant the last charge there." As they prepared the explosive, a voice suddenly filled their comm system. It wasn't human. "You are different," the voice said, its tone flat but curious. "You do not think as one. You are unpredictable." Cooper recognized it as the Void Swarm, consciousness trying to communicate. "That's right," Cooper replied as his team finished setting the charge. "That's the human factor. We don't all think alike." "It is inefficient," the voice stated. Cooper smiled behind his helmet. "Maybe. But it makes us really hard to beat." The charge exploded, creating a hole in the hull. Warning alarms blared as air rushed out into space. Cooper's team, secured in their suits, pushed themselves out through the hole. "Jones, we need pickup now," Cooper called. Their ship appeared around the curve of the larger vessel, dodging debris and drone ships. It maneuvered close enough for Cooper's team to use their thrusters to reach it. As they boarded, Cooper looked back at the dying Void Swarm vessel. The main charges were detonating one after another, tearing the massive ship apart from within. The Earth fleet pressed their advantage, destroying 3 more enemy ships before the remaining Void Swarm vessels retreated, jumping away to safety. On the Defiance, cheers erupted across the bridge. It wasn't a complete victory. Some Void Swarm ships had escaped, but they had won their first major battle. Mitchell didn't join the celebration. He was watching the tactical display, where signals showed the retreating Void Swarm ships regrouping at the edge of the system. "They'll be back," he said to Hayes, who stood beside him. "And they'll be ready for our tactics next time." Hayes nodded. "But now we know they can be hurt. And we know our advantage, human unpredictability, really works." On the command ship of the retreating Void Swarm fleet, Zekthar processed the battle data. For the first time in its long existence, the collective mind experienced confusion. Humans fought differently than any species they had encountered. They didn't follow logical patterns. Even when losing, they found ways to adapt. Zekthar sent a signal to all Void Swarm forces in the sector. Humans must be studied more closely. Capture, do not destroy. The Hive must learn how these strange individual minds work, and then, once understood, they would be eliminated. For any species that could not be absorbed into the collective was a threat to the Void Swarm's very existence. 6 months after their first victory at Neptune, the war had changed dramatically. Humanity and their alien allies no longer fought a defensive battle. Now, they took the fight directly to the Void Swarm. Admiral Patricia Daniels stood in the command center of Europa Base, studying the large holographic map that showed both friendly and enemy territories. Areas in blue represented worlds still free from the Void Swarm. Red areas showed enemy-controlled space. For the first time, there were patches of green, territories reclaimed from the enemy. "Admiral," a young officer announced, "Commodore Mitchell's fleet has returned from their mission." Daniels nodded. "Send him in as soon as he lands." John Mitchell entered the command center 30 minutes later. Now a Commodore in command of Earth's largest battle group, he looked tired but satisfied. Mission successful, he reported without preamble. We destroyed their outpost in the Tau sector and rescued almost 3,000 captives from 6 different species. Any human captives? Daniels asked quietly. Mitchell's face darkened. No. The Void Swarm seems to be keeping humans separate from other prisoners. We still don't know where. Susan Hayes entered the room carrying data tablets. In the months since the war began, she had shifted from science officer to becoming the leading expert on Void Swarm biology and behavior. I may have an answer to that, she said, placing a tablet in front of the Admiral. Based on the data we've gathered, I believe the Void Swarm was artificially created. Created? Mitchell asked in surprise. By whom? I don't know yet, Hayes admitted. But their biology shows signs of engineering. They're too perfect, designed to consume and adapt, and they have one specific goal programmed into them: absorb all intelligent life into their collective. Which is why humans frighten them, Daniels concluded. We resist absorption. Exactly. And that's why they're studying human captives separately. They're trying to solve the puzzle of our resistance. The door to the command center opened again, and Major Ryan Cooper walked in with the tactical expert Lisa Chen. Cooper's Ghostwalkers had become legendary, having completed over 20 successful infiltration missions against Void Swarm targets. We may have found something important, Cooper announced. He nodded to Chen, who activated the central hologram. The display showed what looked like a massive structure deep in Void Swarm territory. What are we looking at? Admiral Daniels asked. We're calling it the Nexus, Chen explained. It appears to be a central command structure for the Void Swarm. All their ships eventually returned to this location. Mitchell studied the hologram closely. If we could strike at this Nexus, it could cripple their entire operation, Cooper finished. But getting there would be nearly impossible, Chen cautioned. It's deep in their territory, heavily defended. No conventional fleet could reach it. A new voice joined the conversation. Who said anything about conventional? They turned to see pilot Eric Vasquez leaning against the doorway. Vasquez had been testing experimental aircraft designed by Kevin Russell. The Thunderbolt can get through, Vasquez said confidently. I've been flying through their sensor nets for weeks. They still can't detect us when we use Russell's phase shift technology. Admiral Daniels looked around at the assembled team. Are you suggesting a strike mission against their central command? Not just a strike, Hayes said, excitement in her voice. If my theory is correct, the Nexus isn't just a command center, it's where their collective consciousness originated. It might be their only true vulnerability. A small team, Cooper suggested. My Ghostwalkers plus Vasquez's Thunderbolt. We go in, plant Russell's new fusion charges, and get out before they know. What hit them? Mitchell shook his head. It's too risky. We need more than just one ship. What if we create a diversion? Chen suggested. A fleet attack elsewhere to draw their forces away from the Nexus. Admiral Daniels considered the options. A joint operation then. Mitchell, you'll lead the main fleet in an attack on their forward bases. Make it look like we're going for their supply lines. Cooper, you and Vasquez will use that distraction to reach the Nexus. What about their bioweapons? Mitchell asked. The last 3 engagements, they've used weapons specifically designed to target human neural pathways. Hayes picked up another tablet. Russell and I have been working on countermeasures. They're not perfect, but they should provide some protection. As they continued planning, none of them noticed a small drone worker hiding in an air vent. The spy had been planted weeks earlier by Zekthar, who had become increasingly focused on understanding humans. Through the drone's eyes, Zekthar watched the humans plan their attack. Unlike other species that planned with perfect logic, humans seemed to embrace risk and uncertainty. They did not seek the most efficient path, but instead looked for unexpected approaches. It was both fascinating and disturbing to the hive mind. 2 weeks later, Commodore Mitchell stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as his fleet prepared to jump to warp speed. The mission was about to begin. All ships report ready, sir, his first officer reported. Mitchell nodded. Send the signal to Cooper. Tell him he has 12 hours from our first engagement to reach the Nexus. The fleet jumped to warp, heading toward the Void Swarm's major supply hub in the Orion sector. Meanwhile, far from the main fleet, the Thunderbolt prepared for its own mission. Eric Vasquez ran final checks on his experimental ship. The Thunderbolt was small, barely large enough to carry Cooper's team of 6 Ghostwalkers plus himself and a co-pilot. But it had technology no other ship possessed, the ability to phase slightly out of normal space, making it nearly invisible to sensors. "Ready when you are, Major," Vasquez called to Cooper, who was checking his team's equipment. "We're good to go," Cooper replied. "Let's make history." The Thunderbolt quietly slipped away from its hiding place near a small moon, heading deep into enemy territory. Using Vasquez's piloting skills and the phase technology, they passed through Void Swarm sensor nets undetected. Far away, Mitchell's fleet dropped out of warp near the Void Swarm supply hub. Immediately, alarms rang out as enemy ships moved to intercept. "All ships attack pattern Delta," Mitchell ordered. "Remember, we need to be as unpredictable as possible." The Earth fleet broke into smaller groups, attacking from multiple angles. The Void Swarm responded with their own perfectly coordinated defense, but Mitchell had expected this. "Now," he ordered. Several small ships suddenly launched from the Earth vessels. Each emitted strange energy patterns designed by Russell to confuse Void Swarm sensors. The enemy ships began to show signs of confusion, their perfect formation breaking. Down. On the Thunderbolt, Cooper's team monitored the battle from afar. "Mitchell's keeping them busy," Vasquez noted as they approached the coordinates of the Nexus. "Let's hope it's enough." As they drew closer, a massive structure came into view. It looked like a giant organic computer, pulsing with blue energy. Ships of all sizes moved around it, entering and leaving like blood cells through veins. "That's it," Cooper whispered. "The heart of the Void Swarm." Vasquez carefully navigated through the outer defenses, using gaps in patrol patterns created, as ships were diverted to fight Mitchell's fleet. Finally, they reached a docking area and attached to an outer port. "Suit up," Cooper told his team. "We go in, plant the charges at these key points, and get out. 30 minutes maximum." The Ghostwalkers entered the Nexus, moving quickly through corridors that seemed partly organic, partly mechanical. Unlike other Void Swarm vessels they had infiltrated, the Nexus was mostly empty of drone workers. "Where is everyone?" one of Cooper's team whispered. "This isn't a ship," Cooper realized. "It's more like a brain. It doesn't need many workers." They reached the first target location and planted one of Russell's special charges. These weren't just explosives. They were designed to release electromagnetic pulses that would disrupt the Void Swarm's collective consciousness. As they moved deeper into the structure, Cooper felt an odd sensation, like something was probing his mind. "We're being scanned," he warned his team. "Mental shields up." Another innovation from Russell and Hayes, training to resist the Void Swarm's mental probes. They had discovered that by focusing on chaos, random thoughts, or nonsensical images, humans could block the Void Swarm's attempts to read their minds. They planted the second and third charges successfully. But as they approached the central chamber, they found their way blocked by a strange shimmering field. "What is this?" one of the team asked, reaching toward it. "Don't touch it," Cooper warned, but too late. The soldier's hand passed through the field, and he suddenly froze, his body rigid. Cooper pulled him back, but the man collapsed to the ground unconscious. "They know we're here," Cooper realized. "We need to finish this now." Outside in space, Mitchell's fleet was taking heavy damage. The Void Swarm had adapted to their tactics faster than expected. "Sir, we're losing ships," his first officer reported. "The enemy has deployed those neural weapons again." Mitchell grimaced as he watched another Earth vessel explode. "How much longer does Cooper need?" "At least 10 more minutes to plant all charges and escape." "Then we hold for 10 more minutes," Mitchell decided. "All ships fall back slowly. Make them work for every inch." Back in the Nexus, Cooper had found another way to the central chamber. With only 2 conscious team members left, they carried the final charge, the largest one, toward. 3 months after the strike on the Nexus, The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. Admiral Daniels stood at the large viewport in the new Galactic Council chamber on Earth, watching as ships from a dozen different species arrived for the historic meeting. "Quite a view, isn't it?" John Mitchell said, joining her. The former captain, now Admiral Mitchell, had led the cleanup operations across formerly Void Swarm-controlled space. "I never thought I'd see this day," Daniels admitted. "When the Horizon first encountered the Void Swarm, I thought we were finished." "So did I," Mitchell agreed. "But we underestimated ourselves." Susan Hayes entered the chamber, accompanied by Kevin Russell and a tall, blue-skinned figure that moved with strange mechanical precision. "Admiral," Hayes said, "I'd like you to meet someone." Daniels turned and found herself face-to-face with Zekthar. The former Void Swarm commander looked different now. Its blue skin had dulled to a softer shade, and its eyes showed something new: individual awareness. "Greetings, Admiral," Zekthar said in a voice that was no longer flat but held hints of emotion. "I wish to thank you and your species." Daniels looked at Hayes questioningly. "Zekthar is one of the Void Swarm fragments. That chose peace," Hayes explained. "When our devices shattered the hive mind, each fragment developed differently. Some continue fighting, but many, like Zekthar, have discovered the value of individual thought." "It is difficult," Zekthar admitted, "to be alone in one's mind, to make choices without the guidance of the collective. But it is also freeing." Young, Lieutenant Nathan Grant entered the room. "Admirals, the council is ready to begin." They moved to the main chamber where representatives from all allied species had gathered. The mood was both celebratory and solemn. Victory had come at a great cost. Mitchell took his place at the podium. "Today marks not an end but a beginning. The Void Swarm threat is not completely eliminated. Some fragments continue to fight, but their power as a unified force is broken." He gestured to large screens showing the reclaimed worlds. "Already 12 planets have been liberated. Their people are returning home and something new is happening. The peaceful Void Swarm fragments are helping us understand their technology, helping us rebuild." Major Cooper, seated with his surviving Ghostwalkers, nodded in approval. His team's sacrifice had made this possible. "But we face new challenges," Mitchell continued. "How do we protect against future threats? How do we help the former Void Swarm members who chose peace? And how do we rebuild a galaxy torn apart by war?" Lisa Chen stood up. "We've already begun implementing a defense network based on human tactical principles. Small, independent units that can respond quickly to threats without central command. And my team has developed technology to detect and disrupt any future hive mind attempts," Russell added. "No one will ever use that weapon against free people again." After the meeting, Mitchell found Zekthar looking out at Earth from the viewport. "You were our worst nightmare once," Mitchell said. "Now look at us." "Your species taught mine something valuable," Zekthar replied. "The strength of the individual mind, the power of choice. And your people taught us the importance of working together, even while remaining individual," Mitchell acknowledged. As the sun set over Earth, ships from dozens of worlds orbited peacefully. The galaxy's worst nightmare had indeed met its match in humans. But the true victory wasn't just defeating an enemy. It was showing that independence and cooperation could exist together. On a small garden world at the edge of reclaimed space, former Void Swarm drones planted crops alongside humans and other species. They were learning concepts like friendship, choice, and peace, ideas that had once been alien to them but now formed the foundation of their new lives. The nightmare was over, and the dream of a new galaxy built on both human individuality and collective cooperation had just begun.